Welcome to our new series, the 200 Movie Challenge. Our goal this year is to watch 200 movies that we haven't seen yet. If you want to listen to the full podcast where this clip is from, the link will be in the description. Now enjoy today's movie.
Soto and Chad here, and this is episode 3 of our 200 movie challenge. I still can't believe we're doing this, Soto. We're going to get to 200. I know we are. We had a good start to this.
Without a doubt. No doubt in my mind now.
Even though there's only 3 movies we're talking about today, there's a lot to talk about for different reasons. And the first movie I want to talk about is kind of a sequel to one that I talked about last week. And I know that you happened to see it as well. So this is actually the first movie we both watched the same week. So we have a lot to discuss about. But Soto, we both saw Terrifier 2.
Oh shit!
Just
We're
a
leading
little.
Off with this?
We're leading off. We are leading off with this. Figured get the one that we both talked about out of the way. Obviously, I talked about the first Terrifier last week and the brutality of the first film, but we also brought up a lot of the shitty acting. There was a lot of bad lines. Obviously,
Terrible.
It was the first movie, so they're just testing things out, but it was a hit. So yes, they had a lot more of a bigger budget the second time around. I think they had a whatever fundraiser, or, whatever it's called, GoFundMe, and they blew their budget out of the water. So they had like almost a half a million, I think. Yeah, if I was trying to remember, I was watching a little bit, and I don't know if they had I think they were trying to raise like 50 grand or something. They ended up getting like 250, 500 grand. I forget the exact amount, but they raised shit ton of movie. Hence, they had better acting. But that was one of the things you brought up with the first Terrifier, how bad it was. So outside of maybe the length, because this movie was 2 hours and 20 minutes for a horror movie, what were your thoughts from the second one compared to the first one?
It definitely felt more, before we get into the details, but overall, big picture, it felt more professional from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt more. It felt like I was watching a movie, and it had a lot of throwbacks to kind of this '80s vibe, which I really liked in it. But yeah, it was definitely a step up. You could tell from the beginning, minus the part we're going to talk about, but I could already tell from the beginning that it was a much higher quality than the first one. And I'm not saying the first one wasn't a great movie, but I understand its importance overall for horror, and I could see where it was trying to go. And overall, I think it did what it needed to do. But immediately, Terrifier 2 just felt like a movie. And that's the best thing I can say about it to start off with, is that it felt like a movie, and then I was like, okay. Which kind of lulled me into a sense of, safety, because I'm like, oh, I'm watching a movie. Like, okay, cool, it's a movie now. And then things happened.
Yeah, a lot of things, good and bad, definitely happened in this film, and I know I watched this before you did, and we were texting, and I joked, and when I knew, I said, you're going to text me in about 5 minutes. And it didn't take you 5 minutes to text me, because, yes, the second one kind of takes place literally right after the first one, and it starts in a laundromat. He's cleaning off all the blood in his clothes, and they introduce, obviously, a lot of new characters, new group of kids, but they kind of had a little girl Terrifier clown, for lack of better terms, because I don't know what to call her. And
Demon Girl.
And obviously a lot of things happen at that laundromat, which you were like, okay, what the fuck? So a
lot of things happened. I mean, one thing really happened, and I don't care who's listening, but I think that we can both say out loud that I was not expecting this Demon Girl to just shit the floor.
Yeah.
It's what happened.
It did.
Sorry, spoiler alert. It's the first 5 minutes. You're thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this vibe. All right, okay, yeah. And she shit the floor, which is a harken back to the first one where he just shits all over the bathroom and writes his name and whatever. But it was the first signal of this movie that I was like, okay,
more crazy shit's gonna happen.
We are now setting the foundation. I was like, I thought I was safe. I was wrong. That was the first indicator.
Yeah, and then we come to find out that no one else at this time, can see the little girl, but Yeah, it was definitely interesting. And another,
Well, because he got brought back to life, right? Like by a demon. Like I kind of assumed that that demon girl was like the entity that brought him back to life. Did you
that
get that
is,
vibe too?
I
Or
don't know, because obviously there's something that happened at the end, which we'll get to. And you're right, because she was not in the first one. And as far as we know, yes, he died in the first one, but then, the electricity went out or, was flashing and he came back to life without explanation, which I'm fine with, like that end tease. The problem I think I had with Terrifier 2, which is, yes, loads better than the first one, is they seem to have introduced a lot of concepts that didn't deliver. But we're
oh,
going to, yeah, just because I felt like for the second one, there should have been more of an explanation of things. Because, yeah, well,
do you need
here's what.
explanation for these things?
Well, let's put it this way. So we meet the main characters, and I kind of forget their
Sure,
names already. The brother and the sister.
it's
Yes,
okay.
yes, and great. The new heroine of this movie, and
Yeah.
a little interesting. But they talk about their dad. Their dad passed away, and you find
Yes.
things like
Interesting.
he
Yeah.
did drawings from kills from the first one, and
Yeah.
other thing. Just he drew the outfit, but they never fully explained this. And
I
like
know.
that's the thing. Like I felt like, okay, give us a little bit more of, no matter how crazy the lore is, because we've
More
watched.
lore.
Well, no, but we've watched Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all this shit, and it's stupid lore.
Sure.
It's out there, but it's just like, okay, what is going on? Explain something to me. Why is this dagger magic? So it's just like, but they're like, nope, that's it. And
You
it's
hate
one
that.
thing, just give us something. And I think that's the
Follow the
problem.
rules.
There was
Follow
no
the rules
rules.
that you set up. You're like, you gotta follow the rules, man. No, I hear you. Yeah, it's what you're saying is 100% valid. Absolutely.
Because you're now creating what we know as a series, because we know there's a third one that just came out last couple of
Mhm.
years. Was it last year? I don't forget. But within the last few years, there is a third one, which we may or may not get. We will get
It
to
takes place
sometime.
right after this movie,
I'm assuming
from
so,
what
and
I
this one
read.
takes place right after the
Picks up
first one.
right. Yeah, it's like right after. I think it takes place during Christmas, so that'll be an interesting Christmas film
Is that our Christmas
to
talk?
talk about.
If it's available, if it's free. But
Oh my god, I don't know. Christmas is too soon for me to watch this shit again. But we'll get to that. I don't know. I'm like, I need a couple years off from this, man. The prospect of watching another Terrifier movie is just, whew, it's overwhelming, which we'll discuss.
well, we're getting there. But yeah, so like the main actress, loads better than the first one. Obviously, just
Yeah.
there was more
Oh yeah.
charisma. You
Without a
just more
doubt.
believability. That you knew what they were talking about. There was not as cheesy of lines as the first ones. I shouldn't even say cheesy. They were just bad lines in the first one, like forced, and you're just
Yeah.
like, no one talks like this. But yes, the second one, yeah, I mean, Art the Clown just kind of takes it up a notch, but it's still more Terrifier. It's still more about the brutality.
Oh my god, yeah.
But what was your what were your first thoughts, or as far as the sequel as a whole?
As a whole, man, one of the most violent movies I've ever seen in my life. And it's just that with most horror movies, or at least the ones that are highly regarded, there's this whole thing about not showing the audience something because, as Spielberg said in Jaws, it's like, whatever you imagine is always going to be worse than what you're seeing on screen. But this movie, it's like, no, what you can imagine is not worse than what we're about to show you. And yeah, I understand. Obviously, for it's got its story parts, and I didn't really get it for story. But
True.
overall, I felt that what it came out to do and what it came out to execute was ridiculously over the top, insane. I believe the director is also a special effects makeup guy.
Correct.
So a lot of the stuff is there's no CG. Maybe there's a little tiny bit of CG in one of the kills, but overall, it's like the absolute violence and over the top that these kills are, and that they show you every single detail of these fucking violent murders. Man, it is exhausting to watch. But honestly, and we'll talk about the rankings too. But there's a lot that I find about this movie that is incredibly like how do I say it? it's incredibly interesting how it like pushes this genre forward. Because like I said, with the hiding the horror thing and making it obvious, like horror can to me feels like at some points really, what can you've seen everything, but what haven't you seen? I don't know, a girl's face being ripped off with acid.
Yep.
So that it was most movies will turn away the camera. And this movie, to its credit, is like, no, we're gonna fucking like our centerpiece of our art and shit, literally, no pun intended, is how fucking brutally violent and realistic we're gonna make these kills. Which I haven't seen in too many horror movies. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of horror movies, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I agree. And we kind of knew that from the first one with the infamous kill that kind of made the Terrifier movie stand out compared to others.
Oh yeah, bisected woman.
And yeah, so yes, this kill, everything was in your face, and
oh, insane.
You either like it or you don't. But it's there, and yes, it was the same. The guy wrote it, directed it, did most of the special effects, and edited it. And that's why some people are like, maybe get a different editor, because again, 2 hours. There's probably about half an hour worth of stuff that maybe just get a little bit shorter. Like I will say,
that, yes, 100%.
There was, when the main actress was dreaming, and the childhood thing. While that was kind of creepy and funny, it went on for far too long.
Oh my
times.
God, the Clown Cafe shit?
Yes, the Clown Cafe. The song was kind of catchy after a while. You're just laughing, but I'm just like, and there was no point to it. There was no follow-up to it.
There was violence.
But that's the thing. It was just her dream, though. Like, none of it was real. None of it was a backstory to art. It was just Sienna, I think her name is, having a bad dream. And then obviously her wings, her costume kind of goes on fire. And then you're like, oh, art made something. But no, again, that was something else that didn't come, nothing happened with it. Just a very catchy song in a weird horror movie. So, but yes, I don't know. But the characters weren't bad, though. Even for lack of better terms, the best friend, the drunk best friend, wasn't as hateable as I like in the first film.
No,
in
the
first film, you're just like, oh my God, this bitch needs to die. Maybe not in that fashion that we saw. This one, you actually like a lot of the characters, no matter how bad. The fact that she mauled her friend. And they're laughing about it. Like, it's a small scene that you can kind of respect, because she wasn't pissed at her friend, but they're pissed. And it was just hilarious. And I liked it. But yes,
great.
Terrifier is about the kills and everything from shotguns to just, oh my God, that acid scene. Thanks for reminding me about that, by the way.
Dude, he shot the mom's face off with the fucking shotgun, propped her body up during dinner, and then started feeding it mashed potatoes.
Oh.
My eyes saw that. In my whole life, I never thought I would see that, but this movie showed me that. I find this movie weirdly brilliant, not because of the drop storylines or anything like that. This movie and this franchise is specifically this director's vibe.
Mm-hmm.
This is his movie from front to back, everything. He does his own stunts. In regards to makeup, he does his own thing. It may not be perfect, but this is his style, and man, he owns the shit out of it. It's uncomfortable. I'm happy my wife never has to watch this movie, but I found it oddly endearing in that way because this is not, I mean, sure, there are some cheesy parts, but I don't feel like there's anything inauthentic about what this director, I think Damien Leone, is trying to do with this. It's got a fan base for real because there's like the vibes and the aura of this like movie franchise. It's there. I don't particularly like having to look at things like this, like when it comes to the murder, and it's like it's hard for me to separate that, but goddamn, man, this shit is a straight up vibe.
I know. I think I texted you when I was done, and I'm like, I think I'm done with horror for a little while. Like, I need, like, just joked about, like, I
didn't
need
watch
a break.
movie after this for days. I was like, I'm not watching movies. Movies scare me now. Like, now I have trauma.
But before we get to the rankings, I did want to bring up one point. I'm watching the opening credits, and I see one of the last names is Chris Jericho. I'm like, Chris Jericho's in this. And because of all the brutality, I forgot because he doesn't appear until the very end. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Chris Jericho's in this movie. And I know you mentioned he's in the third one, probably going to get killed because it takes place right afterwards. But actually,
that terrible scene, yeah.
So, yes, before we get into the rankings, I obviously just want to skip to the end. The very end, the mid-credit scene, because obviously Art's dead. She cuts off the head like the father envisioned, which no one explains, whatever. And then the little girl just takes the head away. And you're like, okay, this is creepy and whatnot. And then, yes, they show the mid-credit scene where, if you remember the girl from the first one who had the mauled face.
Of course.
It's kind of the same actress, actually. She's in a psych ward after killing that reporter. And she gives birth to his head. I mean, I don't know how else to explain that, Soto. I really don't know how else to explain that scene.
I was horrified by that scene from the jump when she's just putting her blood on the walls, and I'm like, what is happening? I thought I was safe. I thought this movie was over. And then that started happening, and I was like, oh my God, why is this happening? And then his head, I had no idea what was going on, and all I wanted to do was just get off that fucking ride, because that shit was like, I thought I was done with this movie. And then it got even more disgusting.
Yep.
At the end.
But I think I like your idea that maybe that little girl, in a weird way, resurrects. I don't know. I didn't fully get it. And like I said, that ending.
That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, maybe it's true. And I guess we'll find out for the third one. So, Soto, I think we've talked about this enough. Where do you rank this in your rankings of movies?
I know this is going to be strange. I mean, it's a short list, but I had to put it at number 2, strictly because I think that it's just more impactful to everything. Like Northman, I loved it. I'll probably watch it again. Like Robert Eggers, we've talked about Robert Eggers a lot on these, podcasts. But, it was whatever. Fall Guy, really funny, great Saturday movie. Middle of the day, it's raining out. You want to watch a movie with Ryan Gosling, it's going to work out. That's great. Oppenheimer, boring. I was disassociated. None of them were as impactful to me or had a vision that was stronger than what was in Terrifier 2. So, do I think Terrifier 2 is a better movie, quote unquote? Maybe not, executed, right? We talked about, obviously it's clear plot holes it has. But, like I said earlier, when you're watching a movie and it's got that undeniable, this is unique, this is a vibe, there's no way I could put it below any of these other things that I'm kind of like, meh. Because, I don't think Fall Guy did anything that... if Fall Guy was really funny and I enjoyed it, it did everything that a movie should do. Like when you go to any restaurant, Louis should sponsor us, and you eat their stuff and you're like, okay, this pasta did the job. I ate it. It's all good. Yeah, that's what Fall Guy is. Oppenheimer is boring. So, again, Terrifier 2, I think that where it stands with the genre, how it took, the craziness from Terrifier 1 and escalated Terrifier 2 was just way cooler than any other movies I've seen. Obviously, I'm not going to put it over Lawrence Arabia. I'm not. That's just ridiculous. But I think that it deserves, its own spot. We've talked about, in just you and I talking, it's like, oh, what's the best horror sequel to a franchise that you've seen? Because usually the first one's good and then they kind of fall off. I think maybe Friday the 13th maybe doesn't have that, but Terrifier 2 is better than Terrifier 1.
Oh, hands down.
It expands the universe and it expands the kills and it brings it into a professional movie kind of a setting. And I think Terrifier 2, as far as just being an excellent, it's got a great horror lead, it's got a great everything, I think it's up there. So I think that there was no way I could put it below anything except Lawrence Arabia this week.
So I take a look at my list, and I will tell you this, Soto, I actually put it right above the first Terrifier, which I think would put it the number 3 spot. And it's funny because I'm looking at, I'm looking at my list as a whole, and I know you can't see the bottom right now, but Under the Bed
My old
is
ass.
shit. But then I look at like My Old Ass and Tag. Those are movies we're not going to talk about in 5 years. We're not even going to remember. Outside of like, can you believe they made a movie called Tag? And like My Old Ass, as much as I enjoyed it and it was had its moments, I'm going to forget
Yes.
about it in a few years.
Right.
The Terrifiers are going to stick with me. Like they are memorable. But the top two I feel are better movies, and I said this begin, kind of the nostalgia feel to them, and I get
Of course.
that's why I put them ahead. But you're right. So right now for me, Terrifier 2 would be right above the first Terrifier. I have a feeling as time goes on, there will be things in between there. But yeah, that's kind of where I put it. Because again, I don't think I'm ever going back to watch either of these Terrifier movies. But they are going to
I
stick
don't
in my
know
brain
if
as
I
far.
want to.
No, I don't. Whenever we get to see the third one, I don't need a recap of the first two. It'd be like, okay, it's gonna be bloody. Yes, that's all I need to know. Like that's what they are, and I'm
Oh.
fine with that. Like I said, I mean, there was other movies. I don't want to say similar, but like Hostel, where it was meant to be brutal. This one takes it above and beyond, and you know what you're getting.
Oh my God.
If you
Yeah.
hate it, don't watch it. But yeah,
Don't. It's not for everybody. It's disgusting. It I hate to say I keep calling it art, but it is an art form to make something look as disgusting and realistic as it does in Terrifier and Terrifier 2. Those are hard scenes to watch, and they're believably gross. So you're like, oh my God, like you do buy into like just the horrifying aspects of it, and it doesn't give a fuck, man. It doesn't care. Like if you don't like that stuff, it's gonna be as gross as possible, which makes me really not want to watch the third one. But I mean, I know I have to. I'm already this far.
we started the
I'm too
journey.
far in.
Yes, when the third one's free, whether or not we get to it this year or not, I know we're gonna see it. But
I think they're making a fourth one too.
probably people keep paying to see it. Why not? I mean, that's what horror
That's business,
franchises
yeah.
do. Just spit them out.
It's legit. It's a horror franchise for extreme horror fans. It's not like you said. It's definitely not for everybody. It's not.
No.